Moderator, this has been a tough year for the Iona community. A process of restructuring which had already been embarked on was profoundly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, as was the redevelopment and reopening of the living quarters in Iona Abbey. But the Iona community has regrouped and refocused, and your board seeks to emphasise this in the report that's before you. Moderator, as it is the custom of the General Assembly to invite the leader of the Iona community to present the bulk of the board's report, I would welcome your invitation to Ruth Harvey, the new leader of the Iona community, to do just that.
Friends, as we emerge out of lockdown, familiar patterns and routines are being refreshed and renovated around us. So too, within the Iona community in 2020, our patterns of membership, of belonging, of keeping our rule have been renewed and refreshed. With 20 online sessions for our global membership during November, first weekly and then monthly online worship with participants from at least 4 continents, our global appeal and commitment remains clear and strong. Gathered and scattered, God is with us. Notwithstanding the horrors of the pandemic, the search for solidarity and support for community across divides, rather than being diminished through COVID, has for many of us been strengthened in these last 12 months. Our newest members of the Iona community making a commitment to our fourfold rule include an Irish Catholic who's a teacher in Switzerland, a Presbyterian minister from the USA now living and working in Glasgow, and a Scottish Presbyterian working for the Church of England. With them and all people of goodwill, we continue to strive for patterns of unity in diversity, patterns of prayer and worship, of action and reflection that bind us to one another and that renew and refresh the global church. So what is it that compels people today to be a part of a religious community? Here are Annie Sharples and Jack Woodruff, 2 of our young adult group members and current volunteers at Iona Abbey.
Hi, I'm Annie.
And I'm Jack. We're volunteers with the Iona community at Iona Abbey as general assistants.
At the moment, this means mowing the grass, helping with housekeeping, leading worship, amongst other things.
We are also members of the Iona Community Young Adults Group.
We've been asked to reflect on how belonging to the Iona community makes a difference to us in our lives and faiths. I'm also a Methodist, and the two together inform the majority of my faith, and affirm that we are called as people of faith to seek peace and work for justice. Volunteering here now makes me reaffirm this commitment through the common life and our worship, and hearing other people saying the same thing next to me gives me hope in the community of God. For me, the Iona community brings together peace, justice, love and faith in all kinds of ways, and that helps me so much in my life and in my understanding of my faith.
And for me, my life and faith has been changed by the Iona community because it has allowed me to meet others of different generations who care about justice, peace and inclusivity as well. Through volunteering on Iona, I've discovered new ways to put my faith into action.
2021 is the year that we, with the rest of the world, celebrate 1500 years since the birth of Columcille, or St. Columba as we now know him, the would-be politician, penitent and pilgrim, to quote the title of Ian Bradley's superbly refreshed biography. In just under 2 weeks, however, we'll be celebrating another great milestone. After 7 years of planning, 5 years of remarkable fundraising, 2 years of closure for refurbishment, and 1 further closed year because of the pandemic, Iona Abbey is formally being reopened to guests. In keeping with the vision and the purpose of the Iona community, we will be welcoming as guests that week families who have been locked in and locked down during COVID, church youth workers who are in desperate need of rest and recovery time, folks who have been isolated through economic or social injustice. In sharing in community with our guests, worshipping together, renewing our commitment to the work of the gospel of justice and peace, we will be continuing to witness to the belief that the radical inclusive community we seek must be embodied in the community we practice. And so here is Chris Mercer, one of our members who, through her life of faith and action, continues to transform the lives of those around her.
Hi, fellow pilgrims. I first came across the Iona community as a schoolgirl, non-church person, and went to Iona as a schoolgirl to join the then Iona youth groups. However, I eventually became an Iona member, and at the same time as joining the Catholic Church about 45 years ago. And it's really inspired and challenged my ecumenical journey, working out my commitments to justice and peace, where I found myself living in the margins, as they say, of the East End of Glasgow. Whilst being severely disabled myself, I live alongside folk with disabilities, asylum seekers, refugees, and folk in poverty of all kinds. I have learned from my need to be accountable to fellow members for my resources and time, to share my basic benefit income, and to make myself available to stand, or as in my case, sit in my wheelchair with others in their need, to encourage and support them on their individual and often traumatic journeys, and help build a sense of community where folk of all faiths can find and none can find ourselves. I work voluntarily by invitation and can find myself accompanying asylum seekers through their often horrific processes in order to achieve refugee status. I share in very basic activities like driving them to the various legal, medical, educational appointments, witnessing, and trying to ensure they get fair and just treatment. I share their meager rations in return, embarrassingly sometimes, whilst listening and often weeping with them as they share their stories. What can I do sometimes when a 9-year-old African girl and her mum get detained, and my efforts to support them result in me being threatened with 13 years in jail by our government departments? And often all I can do is be there, doing my bit. And by joining the food bank queue to share between several families, gather and recycling clothes and household goods, take children on social outings to integrate and ease their trauma, and maybe above all, link with my local Church of Scotland, participate in my local Catholic church, and at home light a candle, often requested by Muslim families as a prayer request, and ask our God to show us new ways to build a fairer and just world.
So friends, as we turn our attention to the future, we in the Iona community recommit ourselves to a life of non-violence, including the eradication of all nuclear weapons, to the peaceful transformation of our socio-political order so that all can live as equals, that differences are honoured and that poverty is eradicated, and to the work of climate justice, honouring the fullness of life to which we are all called as followers of Christ. And so we call on all people of goodwill to join us in turning into action our gospel-driven calling to live and work for God's justice and peace. In commending the report of the Iona community, let me close by giving the last word to William, who became an associate member of the Iona community in 2020.
Hi, my name is William. I first heard of the Iona community through the book Waymarks by Peter Miller, which I have here. I got it in a second-hand bookshop and I just came across it randomly and read it as I was away on holiday one weekend and deeply connected with the language. Just before that period in time, I'd went through a significant faith transition, changing from what I'd been taught growing up in the churches that I attended to a much more open and inclusive and inviting faith, one that left room for doubt and questions. And as I was in that period, I didn't really know how or where I connected with the church overall. I knew that I was still passionate about theology as I had been from a teenager as well, and so began to study theology and religious studies at Glasgow University. From there, I heard of a meeting with Ruth from the Iona community, and decided to go along to hear about the connection between the university and the community. And as soon as I heard it, it just felt like a place where I could belong, where I could connect to, especially with the values that they have, their commitment to justice and to faith in action. And so I was delighted to get connected, to become part of the community, and myself and my fiancée Katie are now associate members of the Iona community, and we're excited to see what will happen over the next season as COVID restrictions lift, as we find a church to settle in, and as we can travel to the Iona Abbey as well for the reopening. So we're excited to be involved, we're excited to be connected to this, and to see the way that it will impact our faith going forward, and hopefully allow us to find a place to belong within the church.